Fellow citizens of Gotham, my name is Graham Elwood, and you're watching the Political Vigilante. Another interview from fantastic El Salvador. We are here in El Zonte Beach, which is now Bitcoin Beach.
Yeah.
And I'm here with Michael Peterson, the founder of Bitcoin Beach, basically. And you have the Bitcoin Beach podcast.
Yeah.
And I've been down here about 5 days now. I've seen, my whole point of coming down here was to see it for myself, to see what it's like.
Hopefully, I hope you were spending some Bitcoin. Hopefully.
Yes, well, that's what I do. I rented a surfboard in El Zonte with Bitcoin,
nice.
And Sandy from Sandy Waves, my tour guide, has been taking me to all this. I've gone to the grocery store. I've bought little snacks. It's been awesome. I paid for my rental car in Bitcoin. It's really been amazing, and meeting the Bitcoin community here, some expats, some local. And the thing that I think the thing I'm really impressed with is the amount of people who have come here to help build a community, not just like, oh, well, the land's cheap and I got a bunch of Bitcoin that I paid $1,000 a coin, whatever. And just roll in a bunch of rich gringos and, we're going to start a Bitcoin Marriott or whatever, it's.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it's a real contrast to what we've seen happen in Puerto Rico, where there people go because, they don't have any capital gains for the time that they're actually living in Puerto Rico. And so they're not really there to build the economy. Right. They're just there because it has tax advantage for them. Yeah. In El Salvador, people are here because it feels like the new frontier. They're excited about what's happening here. They're excited about starting businesses, pouring into the economy, volunteering, and pushing forward these motivated young Salvadoran entrepreneurs that are kind of unleashed for the first time in their lives. And so it's a very different feel than other kind of crypto havens. This is Bitcoin, and because of that, it's very different.
That's what's so amazing, is people really want to help the country, and because Bukele has locked up all the criminals and made it safe, we were literally just in one of the former gang neighborhoods that 18 months ago we would have been killed in, which was like, emotionally it was like, wow. So I wanted to ask you, give us your. I'm a superhero fan. Give me your origin story, man. When did you get bit by the radioactive spider to become? When did this happen? How did this?
Yeah, for us, Bitcoin came later. It was actually originally we were just living here in this community and seeing all the challenges that were happening, and specifically the youth joining the gangs, and so we wanted to do something about that. There was a couple young men from the community who really had a heart to lead that, and so they said, hey, we can do these different things targeting the youth, help them keep them in school, start paying them to clean up the community. And so for a number of years we were doing this using fiat, and it worked okay. It was it was definitely like having an impact, but it felt like there was something missing. And I think like 3 or 4 years ago, we had somebody that said, hey, we love what you guys are doing there. We want to donate some Bitcoin, but we don't want you just to convert it to fiat. We want you to actually use it as Bitcoin, to pay the people in Bitcoin, to really start a circular Bitcoin economy. And their belief was that would have a much bigger impact than just the monetary value of the Bitcoin. So for me, that was exciting. I was already a Bitcoiner. I had, been following Bitcoin from the very early days. I'm not a technical person, so I didn't buy it in the beginning because it was, it had to be fairly technical at that point. But it made sense for me. I come at it more as an economist, and so that's what excited me, was seeing a new monetary system take shape in a country. And I saw that the existing monetary system was actually really holding El Salvador back. And so for me, the ability to have this kind of unhinged, unleashed ability to do something nobody had done before was super exciting. A little bit daunting, but it was like, hey, yeah, let's actually try to start a circular Bitcoin economy from scratch. And so when we started using, instead of paying them in fiat, paying them in Bitcoin for cleaning the river or cleaning the beaches, when we started giving them stipends for their grades, instead of doing it in cash, doing it in Bitcoin, we saw this change happen that we hadn't anticipated. It was different. They had, for the first time, started questioning, okay, well, what actually is money, and why am I, willing to take a piece of paper or coins in exchange for my time versus taking this digital currency. They're studying like the volatility of it, why it goes up and down, and for the first time in their lives asking all these questions that even a lot of Americans never ask. You ask Americans what money is, and it's the dollar bills that you use. They don't understand what it actually represents. And so we saw this, it was kind of this aha moment in these students. And not just one time, it was like in multiple stages. They'd have one aha in one area, and then that would lead them down the rabbit hole into another area. And so initially it was helping them save for the first time in their lives, because they understood the opportunity cost of spending now versus saving for the future. Obviously, they still had to spend some money to buy their food and their daily needs, but they made wiser decisions when they adopted a Bitcoin standard. And so that was just eye-opening to us, because that's one of the biggest challenges in economic development, is how do you change people's perspective about time preferences? How do you get them to make sacrifices now for the future?
That's hard to do in America, to get people to just the old adage, like take 20% of your paycheck and put it into savings. That's hard to get Americans to do. That took me years to figure out. But it's interesting you say that, because Bitcoin, when you go, wait a minute, I'm going to stack this little bit of Bitcoin over here, and I'm going to see it, my savings kind of go up and down a little bit. But then, we all Bitcoiners, when it was 15,000 in the fall, probably bought a little, and now we're like, look at that $200 is now $400.
And when they see that kind of over time, it makes them question, okay, do I really need to buy this Coke right now? Do I really need to buy this trinket? Or should I save it and wait in the future when this Bitcoin will be worth more? Now, obviously, like I said, they still have their necessities they're going to spend, but it just helps you be a wiser spender when you're spending in the world's hardest money, because you really question each purchase. And so for the first time ever, we saw this culture of savings and thinking of the future start to develop. And it really went beyond money. At first it was, just in the financial realm, but then we started to see they started talking about going back to school. Where before they're like, no, if I go to school, I can earn a wage now, and I'm giving up that. But it changed their way of evaluating it, where now they're thinking, okay, yes, I'm giving up the wages now, but I can make much more in the future for decades. And so it's better to sacrifice now and go to university. And so we saw it across like all these different areas. They're buying less just crap and trash that they don't need. They're thinking longer term, and they're really understanding for the first time how the economic system works and how it's been stacked against them historically, and the changes they can make so that they have a level playing field.
I mean, that's awesome to see. It really just, you got into Bitcoin kind of on your own a little bit. You came down here probably because you're a surfer, right?
Yeah, I originally came down here on a surf trip, and then just this was like 20 years ago, fell in love with the country. And then we started to get involved with a number of different projects with some different churches and different missionaries and nonprofits that were working here. And so that we decided to move our life down here. We have a seasonal business in the U.S. So, that in the past, we just would have a lot of time for vacation. So we kind of switched that up, and we would live down here for 8 months a year and just go back and work in the U.S. 4 months a year. And that's kind of how it all started.
Okay. That's awesome. So now you've just kind of go through the timeline here. You've started this, getting people onto Bitcoin. You're seeing this circular economy start. How did this become, El Zonte Beach when did it start being called Bitcoin Beach? When did you guys, who coined that term? And when did it start? And when did it?
Yeah, I want to be a little careful, because we never want to change the name of the location. It's definitely El Zonte, and there's been some people like, oh, you're trying to change the name. No, the idea of Bitcoin Beach was just for all of the coast of El Salvador to be kind of a Bitcoin haven. And in fact, originally we started the Bitcoin Beach project on the other end of the country in a place called Punta Mango. And in fact, I just came from there this morning. A beautiful, beautiful part of the country, also great surfing. And we realized as we started the project that it was just going to take a lot more one-on-one time from us, and because that was 3 hours away from where we lived, we shifted the project here to El Zonte as kind of the primary, but that was the secondary location. So we have another Hope House, we call it the Castle of Hope down there in Punta Mongo. We're doing the same things that we've done here in El Zonte. So the idea was always for this to be something that would help the coastal area of El Salvador, like across the coast. That's why we called it Bitcoin Beach, this kind of open-ended, yeah.
Right.
But, of course, because this is where it really, most people know of it from. This is, a lot of people think of El Zonte as Bitcoin Beach. But yeah, really it was meant to be just coastal El Salvador.
Well, I'm hoping, I'm hearing these Bitcoin bubbles popping up in Costa Rica and Guatemala. I'd love to see, just call this the Orange Coast and just make it every surf spot in Central America is just using Bitcoin.
I mean, it's happening. I think I think we're only a few years out from that really being a reality. I mean, we're already seeing it here in El Salvador, and like you were mentioning, Costa Rica. We just got to fill in the spots there in Nicaragua and Panama. But yeah, it's already happening.
So then, when as you started doing this, then when Bukele became president, and how did it affect you here and everything you're doing, not just here in El Zonte, but also around the country when Bukele passed the law? What was it, June of 21? It became law in September of 21, I believe.
I'm always fuzzy on timelines, but that sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I think that's right. I should know this, but yeah. It's this last few years have been a blur. But so we started really adopting the Bitcoin aspect into our project about the time that Bukele started running for president. So,
which is 2019.
I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
And so I remember I did a podcast with Peter McCormick, and in that I was talking about, hey, there's this new guy running that looks like he's going to win, and he's young and innovative, and we think, I actually made a prediction on that podcast that El Salvador would be the first country to adopt Bitcoin.
You called it?
Yeah, I called it.
Wow.
And, it was funny. I forgot about it, and I went back. I was listening to the podcast for something else. I was like, no, I did. I was convinced even at the beginning. And so he was just one of those kind of mavericks that was willing to think outside the box, to swing for the fences, and I think really had a vision and a dream that El Salvador could be something special. And so I just felt like the fact that they've already given up their currency, they were using the US dollar, so they didn't have that hurdle to deal with. I felt, no, definitely El Salvador will be the first place to adopt Bitcoin.
And so it's almost been about 2 years since it became adopted. Here we are in June of 23. What have you seen in these 2 years?
So it's actually gone way better than I expected since the law was passed. Initially, when the law was passed, I put something on Twitter of my predictions like, hey, it's going to be a nightmare at first. I didn't even think the wallet would launch because, that the timelines were so condensed and they were trying to do so much. And so they've gotten a lot of criticism because there's been a lot of bugs to work out and it's been messy. But I actually think it's gone much smoother than I would have expected for an undertaking of this size. And the adoption that's happening now, it's not just this like sugar high from the bill being passed. It's businesses understanding the value proposition of using Bitcoin, that it's better than credit cards. They don't have to pay the fees, the way that it gives them freedom to send money where they need it, that it brings all these unbanked people now can be, digital customers. They can be buying stuff from them online for the first time. And so I think now we see these businesses, they're adopting, not because the government told them they had to, but because they understand if they don't, they're going to be left behind.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see, like, I'm staying in El Tunco, and, the stores that do, some places do, some places don't, and then in San Salvador, some do, some don't. And it is still, it's only been like less than 2 years. So the fact that, whatever, probably 80-90% of the people here are doing it, and then the rest of the country is probably 50%, 60%, maybe.
Maybe less, probably
40?
maybe like 20 or 30%
Okay.
of the businesses, because most of the big businesses are, but a lot of the small businesses are still. So if you look at just volume of sales, probably half the businesses that do half the sales in the country are accepting it. But it's just a number of businesses. I would say it's probably 20 to 30%.
But this point was brought up to me. I mean, it might not seem like a lot, but America was what, 1% of businesses?
Crazy, because that's what people say, like, oh, it's not that much. You're like, El Salvador went from having like the lowest Bitcoin adoption in the world to having the highest. Bitcoin adoption in the world, like in such short order.
Overnight.
How can you not see that as a success? And not just the actual use of it, just it transformed the whole image of El Salvador overnight. Now it's known as like the in place to be. It's a tech mecca. It's a finance mecca, where before it was just known for gangs and murder rates.
Yeah.
And I mean, you see building everywhere. There's construction going on everywhere. There's Salvadorans that have been out of the country for decades that are returning because they see a better future here than they do in the U.S. or Canada or Europe. There's, I mean, Canadians, Australians, Europeans, people from all over the world that are moving here with their families, seeing this almost as like the way the Europeans saw the Americas, you know, a couple centuries ago, as like a place where they could go and have freedom and opportunity. Now people are seeing El Salvador in that way, and it's amazing to just see this influx in the last few years.
So then tell us about Hope House. What is Hope House doing?
So Hope House was kind of the social initiatives of everything that we were doing with Bitcoin Beach. They kind of grew up together. That was, even before Hope House, we were doing community projects that were kind of the genesis of that. And so they've kind of grown up together. We're actually in the process right now, because things have continued to grow and we've got so many different things, of going back and making a little bit of a separation between those two projects, because it's just so many different things going on. And so now that's kind of like the social projects things. And then we have Bitcoin Beach as the Bitcoin only kind of focus on Bitcoin education and those sorts of things. But still, you know, working together hand in hand. And the end goal is always just seeing people's lives improve.
Locals, El Salvadorians.
Yeah, yes. And we kind of remind people that for us, Bitcoin adoption is not the end goal. Like, we see Bitcoin adoption as a tool that helps for human flourishing. That's what we want to see. We want to see, you know, fathers and mothers who don't feel like they have to leave the country in order to support their kids. We want to see people feel like they can build a business here and, you know, really raise the stature of El Salvador. And so we see Bitcoin as a crucial tool in helping that happen, but it's not the end-all be-all. You have to have all these other components that you know, give people the tools to participate in the opportunities that are coming. Because if you don't prepare them with, you know, helping them learn English or coding or understanding real estate, they could be left behind as money flows in and they get pushed out. And so that's really our goal, is to make sure that Salvadorans are the beneficiaries of the change that's coming to El Salvador.
Yeah, because that was my question. You know, when I heard about what was happening here, I was like, I just hope there's not just a bunch of rich people from America and the West or whatever just flooding in money and pricing out locals, and then they're pushed to this, like you say, pushed to the sidelines. And it's really wonderful to hear from you and other people that a big goal is, like, we're not just putting money in here, but educating El Salvadorians so that they can then have a whole generation of kids that are tech savvy, that can work in that industry, can work in real estate.
Yeah, Stacy and Max Kaiser have really been pushing this initiative with this coding and developer program, and so it's called the Kubo, because they do them in these, initially the idea was doing them in these kind of learning cubes. And so it's so great seeing them. I think in 10 years from now, El Salvador will have like the top developers specifically in the Bitcoin space, and kind of coming from nothing. So it's amazing how fast that's come along already. But it's not just for technical people. There's also tons of, you know, tourists, opportunities as Bitcoin tourists kind of stream in. There's, you know, even like in the construction industry because of all the building and everything. So it's kind of impacting everybody at all levels and bringing new opportunities to them.
And give us some. I mean, are like any specific stories that come to mind of a specific person or group or family or anything like that you can say they were here and now they're.
One example is this guy Freddie, who's actually our caretaker's son. We saw him, you know, he kind of grew up with our family, and he was the first one in his family to go to university. He got a computer degree, and now he's teaching classes. He's been teaching classes in Hope House in computers. He also teaches at the high school here. And so he's just one of this new generation that's kind of popping up and going far behind, what their parents ever thought that their kids would be able to achieve. And they're really going to be the leaders of this country, going forward. And I mean, now, I have to go to them for technical help because they're so far ahead of, where I'm at. Not that that's a pretty low bar, but in the past that was, I would have been one of the more technical savvy people here. Now you have all these people that understand far beyond where I'm at, and I love that. I love seeing all these people grow in their areas of strengths. You see number of people being able to buy homes when they're still, 19, 20 years old. They're buying property here. They're participating in the property boom that's happening here. We have a project that we're doing in conjunction with New Story, which is a housing nonprofit. They're building, I think the first phase is 125 homes here in El Zonte that they're building for, 100 plus families that before were living kind of squatters, most of them living on government land or in unsafe areas. Now they're going to have homes with their own titles. They're the first people in the world that are paying their mortgages on these homes in Bitcoin. So they don't denominate it in Bitcoin. You don't want them to, be stuck with that as Bitcoin moons. But so they're denominated in dollars, but they make their monthly payments using Lightning. And so it makes it so much more efficient for them. They don't have to travel anywhere. They don't have to do anything. It makes it more efficient for the nonprofits so they can give them these loans. They're actually interest-free loans, and the cost of the house is actually subsidized. So they're able to get into these houses for, I think the payments are like $60 a month, and they make it, through their Lightning wallet. So we're seeing all these kind of neat things happen here.
And so, all right, so all this great stuff's happening, and I've talked to a handful of El Salvadorians since I've been here, and there's like the excitement, but also they're coming off of 4 decades of either civil war, gang violence. So I notice a lot of locals are a little like, yeah, okay, which I totally get. You can't grow up in this abject violence and corruption and then just go. It's hard to process.
Yeah.
I mean, so what do you say, like, what if something changes? What if Bukele doesn't win? What if there's a coup attempt or some crazy? I mean,
Yeah, I think that everything that's been happening will have lasting benefits, regardless of even if it ends tomorrow, which is almost impossible to see that happening. But even if it were, that there's skills, this way of viewing the world. People have been exposed to a different way of thinking. They're learning how to learn for the first time, a lot of these populations, and really tied into the global economy. Like we have one guy here working in Hope House that he's an architect student, but now he's working for a U.S. construction company because he can be paid in Bitcoin. And so he has the opportunity to make more than he would ever anywhere else, but also to connect to the global system, so that even if he moves on from that firm to another, he'll be able to make much more without having to leave El Salvador. And so I think it's kind of opened this, it's kind of like the toothpaste has been pushed out of the toothpaste. Even if they want to stuff it back in, it's going to be impossible.
Yeah, it is. I think the genie is out of the bottle, man. The orange genie is out of the bottle, because it is every Bitcoiner all over the world is like talking about this place, and you're seeing, again, Bitcoin bubbles on some. There's an island in the Philippines that is all Bitcoin, and the thing that was fascinating to me, I read the Bitcoin Beach white paper, and it's really the foundation of what you're doing is giving back. It's being of service. It's community service. It's and building the circular economies, and that was your main point in the because it's worked here, is don't try to spread it all over the place. Start here. Get one little community. So that's the thing I've been starting to tell my audience is like, everyone can't move down here. Do you have a little neighborhood shop that you go to? Do you have your own little coffee shop? Start accepting Bitcoin. Talk to the person next door that sells shoes. Get them to do it. Get everyone on your block, if you're a merchant anywhere in America, anywhere in the world, to start accepting it, right? Isn't that what you would?
Yeah, we've found that it's better to go small, like a smaller number of people, but go deeper with them. Because what a lot of, in the past, a lot of people tried to do, they get like one store in one city to take it, and they get another store, 10 miles away to take it. But that doesn't create a circular economy. It's kind of a novelty. You can go there and spend Bitcoin, but the employee from this store is not going to be able to spend it in their own neighborhood, and so they're just going to go back to fiat. So what you really want to do is focus on a small area, make sure everybody, or the vast majority of them, are living on a Bitcoin standard, are accepting Bitcoin, and that makes people want to opt in because they see, okay, if I'm not, they're losing out on customers. And then you kind of grow it out from there. So we think it's much more effective to go deep in a smaller locale and then let it naturally spread out from there than to try to just shotgun, a bunch of different businesses that, it'll be a novelty for a little while, and then nobody's spending with them, so they'll stop accepting it.
Right. So, yeah, what would you, to the person watching this that knows a little bit about Bitcoin, but is intrigued by what's happening here, what do you say to them?
I would say study money, study the history of money, and study how unfair money is for most people in the world. As Americans, we don't realize, this exorbitant privilege that we have to be using the world's reserve currency and to be able to just print it out of thin air and get things from other people, just magically by printing money out of thin air. But that actually makes the rest of the world, on the losing end of that. And so Bitcoin is something that will kind of level the playing field, and it's important. We want a fair financial system. I think everybody, if you press them, would say, yeah, it's only right that the world's financial system is the same for everybody, that there's not winners and losers just based on how it's structured. And so, obviously the people that are currently on the winning side, they may not want to give up the benefits that they have, but I think over time they'll realize that that's why we have wars, that's why we have all these things. It usually comes out of an unjust financial system.
Yeah, to say the least. I want to emphasize too to people is make being of service part of what you're doing. Make giving back. We can't just all. That's the thing I'm noticing here. People aren't just like stack my, hodl my Bitcoin. It's like you gotta
spend some.
You gotta spend some.
You gotta spread those sats around.
You gotta spread those sats around.
Yeah.
And like I had a bunch, and I was like moving it over to my wallet to come down here, and I was like, oh, this is good.
I understand. Like, I'm definitely a hodler.
Sure.
I'm gonna save and be wise, but it's still just money. And if your life's just about hoarding money, that's a sad life.
It is a sad life.
So that's what we encourage people. Yeah, be wise with your money, but be generous with it. Spread it around. Give back. And especially if you're a Bitcoiner that got in early and are sitting on a substantial amount, you still can't take it with you. So you might as well do some good with it.
There's a great old expression. You've never seen a hearse with a U-Haul attached to it. And you will never see a hearse with a cold wallet attached to it either.
I mean, there's a lot of people that will just, nobody will ever be able to access it anymore, but, what good is that doing?
Right,
so
exactly.
Why not instead, be using it and enjoy life? If you're sitting on some Bitcoin and you can go out and spend it and bring enjoyment to yourself, but also spread that Bitcoin around and provide jobs and stuff, I think it's kind of stingy not to.
Hey, man, I'm on a surf trip. I mean, I'm doing this is like a work trip, but I'm surfing.
Yeah.
And I'm spending my money in this economy, which I'm happy to do, and it's really awesome. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and to talk to my audience. And this is for my YouTube audience and to make a little promotional reel, because I'm in the process of raising money to come back down here and do a big documentary to really show it, because I was telling Sandy Waves today when we left the formerly dangerous neighborhood, it was really powerful for both of us, especially her, because she was like, I could not have visited that neighborhood because she lived in a rival gangs area. Not that she's in a gang, but just living in that neighborhood, you could not.
Even people from here, locals that I would surf with, I'd say, hey, let's go surf there. I can't go because, that's the other gang. And I'm like, but you're not in the gang. They're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm from that area. And so they're like, you can go, you'll be fine. But if I go, I might have problems.
Yeah.
So. But that doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And that's That's amazing. So I want to come back and tell the bigger story to more audiences. I want people that don't know what Bitcoin is to go, what? And I want people who are like, oh, Bukele's violating human rights to go, okay, what about all of the people he murdered and the human rights and the people who every day they left their homes were like, am I going to get a stray bullet in the head today? Am I going to get abducted? Am I going to every day that was a fear.
I think, and I have no problem with people like questioning and
Sure.
people pushing back and saying, hey, is this the way it should be done? And hey, what about these people that are potentially arrested unjustly? And for sure there are people that were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think it's fine for us to bring those up, but you have to say, like, what is the alternative? Like, the alternative was literally hundreds of thousands of people, being murdered or imprisoned in their own homes. And so there aren't easy choices to make in this, and I don't see a way the government could have done it any other way. It was so endemic, so ingrained here that they had to come out with this overwhelming force in order to cut off the pipeline. Because before, they couldn't arrest people fast enough because they would replace them with new gang members faster than they could arrest them. And so that just drew more and more young people into this life of, that's going to be a horrible life for them. It's not, being in a gang is not a good life. And most gang members, after they've been in it for a while, they don't want that for their kids or their younger siblings. And so the key to stopping that pipeline is making it clear how unattractive that is. And that's what this has done. Now the young people don't want to join the gang. It used to be kind of, it's kind of cool because then people have to respect me and nobody can say anything to me, and it was kind of seen as that, where now it's like, no, I will wind up in jail and it's going to be a horrible life, and so I don't want anything to do with it. So it's really cut that pipeline off, and because of that, you're going to literally have hundreds of thousands of kids that are saved out of the life of the gangs.
That's amazing. So, well, tell people how they can follow you, your podcast, get involved, learn about Hope House, and how they can create what you guys did here elsewhere.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter. My handle's just at Bitcoin Beach. We do have a podcast that's focused on Bitcoin, but also life in El Salvador. So a lot of our viewers are people that want to move to El Salvador or kind of dreaming of moving to Salvador. So we kind of really focus on the intersection of Bitcoin and life in El Salvador. Invite you to support Hope House. You can follow them separately on Twitter. They have their own handle, and donate to them, to the English classes, the other projects that we have. But most of all, just come down to El Salvador and see it for yourself, because if you just read the headlines or even listening to people like us, you won't know who to believe. So You got to come down here and see it for yourself and make up your own mind.
That's what I did. I was like, I got to see this for myself, man. And I was cautiously optimistic, but I have a cynical side of it. It's good, like you said, it's good to ask questions.
Yeah.
We should go, well, let's see. Is this just a promotional machine or whatever? So, yeah, and support what they're doing at Hope House, everybody. So, Michael, thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
I really
for coming out.
And I know you moved your schedule around to accommodate me. I really appreciate that, and we thank you for letting us come here and shoot this. And so, follow Hope House, follow Bitcoin Beach Podcast, everybody. Support our show. You'll see the scroll below, all the ways that you can support what we're doing. Go to grahamelwood.com, sign up for the newsletter, and follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth. Shave your knuckles for justice. Boom!